Hey there. Welcome to episode 244 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is my new G.I. Joe ReAction figures from Super 7. This is wave 5 of their G.I. Joe ReAction figures. I'm going to get into them in a minute, but I'll start this by saying this is one of the rare drinking episodes of Mike's Collection. Usually I shoot these things like during the day or whatever, but it is Saturday night. It's getting close to midnight as I shoot this, and I just finished watching some UFC fights that were on. They were on early today, so they're all wrapped up by 11 o'clock, and so I've been sitting around watching some fights for a few hours, and I decided to go to the liquor store today and get, rather than buy like a case of Bud Light or something, I decided to just grab a bunch of random tall boys from microbreweries. And I went with, I don't know, I was feeling like I wanted something a little more flavorful than, Bud Light, Coors Light, the things that I might drink on a fairly regular basis. So I bought a bunch of like microbrewery IPAs, and most of them were like 8%, 8.5%, and I've been drinking them for a few hours. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good right now as I shoot this. In fact, the next one that I'm going to open with you guys right now, it's called Space Words. It's a triple IPA with Galaxy Eclipse and Comet hops. It is 10.1% alcohol. It comes from Two Crows Brewery. So it's a pretty fancy can here. So 10.1. Pretty hardcore. Alright, so we're going to crack this open. And then we'll start reviewing some G.I. Joes. Yeah, it's not bad. My initial sip, I've never had this beer before. It's all right, but yeah, it tastes strong for sure. Let's see, do they provide a description on here anywhere? Not really. So it's a pretty strong beer. Yeesh. Anyway, so yeah, Saturday night, drinking beers, reviewing G.I. Joes. That's what it's all about. So, this past week, there's been lots of toy news that I want to talk about. There was new Marvel Legend reveals and pre-orders that went up. There was new G.I. Joe Classified figure reveals and pre-orders. There was new Action Force reveals. So I want to talk about all that stuff, but I'm probably going to save that for an episode this week when my buddy Chad comes over, and that's usually when we talk about more general stuff. Usually when I'm sitting here by myself, I try and do a little bit more of a focused, pick a topic, pick a wave of figures. So I got a wave of G.I. Joe ReAction figures a little while ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago at this point, and I want to talk about them so I can kind of get that over with before I move on to more current toy news. So, it's a pretty cool wave of figures. I know you're probably already familiar with this stuff, but I'll do a really quick recap. Super 7, they do ReAction figures, which are little 5 points of articulation figures, which is basically done in the same style as the old Kenner Star Wars figures of the late 70s, early 80s. 5 points for articulation, very simple. And I really enjoy ReAction figures. I get comments on this channel all the time from people that say, I don't get these, I don't understand why these are popular, they're not as good as the G.I. Joes of the 80s. Fair enough. They make G.I. Joe ReAction figures, they only have 5 points of articulation. The G.I. Joes in the 80s had way more. There's ReAction figures of Transformers. They don't transform. the Transformers of the 80s and even of today transform. So some people have a really hard time wrapping their heads around why anybody would want these simple little figures that only have 5 points of articulation. I don't know. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. So whatever. I assume if you're watching this, it's because you're interested in hearing about these figures and you're on the same page as me. I love the vintage G.I. Joes with, O-rings, with elastic waistbands, and, with kung fu grip, and with, their arms swivel and their heads bob up and down, and the Transformers. I like Transformers that transform. I got a whole bunch of them over here. But I still totally have an affection for these 5 points of articulation, these really simple little figures. So, I think they're great. So, the latest wave of G.I. Joes, it's wave 5, and there were 9 new figures. So, I think it's the biggest wave yet of G.I. Joe reaction figures. And I actually did not buy the complete wave. I bought 6 of the figures, so I'm going to talk about 6 of them today. Plus, I also bought 1 figure from Wave 4 that I didn't previously buy. I'm going to talk about that here in this video as well. So, what figures did I not buy? Maybe I'll just quickly talk about those first. So, there was a new Duke figure. So this is my Duke reaction figure that I already have. I think he was included in wave 1 or 2, whatever it was. And this is a great Duke figure. I love it. Like, it looks like Duke leapt right out of the cartoon. This is what he looked like in that old 80s cartoon produced by Sunbow. And anyway, they made a new figure of this guy, but he comes with different accessories. He's got some like gladiator weapons, because it's based on an episode of the cartoon where he got captured by Cobra and they made him fight in their arena of sport, which is basically a gladiator coliseum. So he's got some different accessories. I forget exactly what he has. He might have a sword, maybe a trident or something, but it's basically the exact same figure. Now, I haven't seen that figure, so I don't know. Maybe there are some slight differences. Maybe the colors are a little different. I don't know. But regardless, even if his shirt is a different color and he comes with a different weapon, that wasn't enough of a reason for me to buy it. These figures, as much as I love them, they're kind of overpriced. Up here in Canada, these guys cost anywhere from about $23 to $30, which is nuts for what you're getting for these little guys. So yeah, if these things were like $10 to $12, which is what I think they're worth, I would probably buy the other versions, but I have to be a little choosy. So yeah, this guy here, just because he comes with different weapons and perhaps a slightly different paint scheme, wasn't enough for me to get the new Duke. So I did not get him. Now also, there was the Snake Eyes version 2. So those of you who are in the know on G.I. Joe, Snake Eyes version 1, that was his commando look back from 1982. And so Super 7 has already released a reaction figure of him, and they've repainted it several times. Anyway, they've also released his version, his 1985 version 2, which was his probably better known ninja look, which has that visor across his face. That's the look he has in the movies and stuff. So I have this figure here. This is, version 2 Snake Eyes, his ninja look. Anyway, Ninja Snake Eyes also got captured and put into the arena of sport. And so they made another figure of him. Now it's a little different than Duke. And I only know that from looking at the images and comparing. I don't know exactly how different they are. It looks to be, by and large, the exact same figure as this one here. Except, I don't know if you can see there, but this guy has 3 grenades across his chest. The new version does not. It looks like he still has the bandolier across his chest, but he doesn't have the grenades. Another interesting thing of note is, like, this guy here, if you look on his legs, he's got these straps on both of his legs. On one leg, he's got like a little gun that's holstered. It's not removable. It's part of the sculpt. On the other leg, he's got like a knife that's sheathed on his leg. Again, it's part of the sculpt. So on the new version, he's only got an accessory on one of his legs. The other leg is bare. So, I don't know. It seems like maybe if you're really hardcore and you want figures that are super specific to that episode of the cartoon, and maybe in that episode of the cartoon, like I've seen all the episodes of the cartoon, but I don't remember them scene by scene. But maybe he doesn't have his grenades. I guess it would make sense that Cobra would remove the grenades from him before they put him in the arena. But that's I'm pretty impressed if Super 7 created a whole new body sculpt without the grenades just because they were missing from that episode of the cartoon. Same as the leg, like maybe Cobra took his knife or his gun off of his leg because they wouldn't want a prisoner with a gun on his leg. And the fact that Super 7 would sculpt a whole new leg for that, it's pretty impressive because I don't think too many people would have, complained too much if they just basically released the same figure with the new accessories. He comes with like a net and again, I think a trident and maybe some other stuff. So it's pretty cool, but for me, I don't need this same figure, even with some slight changes with a couple new accessories. As far as I'm concerned, this is good enough for Snake Eyes version 2, so I didn't upgrade him. Now, the other figure that I did not get from this wave is Mutt, which is the G.I. Joe dog handler, and his dog, Junkyard. So the new version has Mutt with his helmet on. This one here, you can see he does not have a helmet. He's got his hair showing. So the new version has a helmet as part of the sculpt, so it's permanently attached to his head. And Junkyard is painted full black, which is the color, which is accurate to the vintage toy, whereas this brown color, I think, is more accurate to the vintage cartoon. So, it would be a cool figure to have. And sure, if it was $5 to $10, I probably would have bought it all day long. But at $25 to $30, it wasn't worth it to me to have a Mutt with a helmet and with a black dog, because this is good enough for me. So those are the figures I did not buy. And then as for the one figure that I did buy that was part of Wave 4, it's the G.I. Joe Camo Trooper. So we'll talk about him a little bit more. But anyway, so like I said, I'm shooting this on a Saturday night. But I had these figures for 2 weeks already. And I wanted to take some video of them while they were still in their package before I opened them up for you guys. So I shot some video of each figure in their packaging. So I'm going to cut to the figures in their packaging first. And during those segments, I'm stone sober. Anyway, so I don't know. I like to think that when I'm drinking, it's not too blatant. I'm not like slurring my words or, falling over myself or anything. But anyway, I'll just let you know. The footage I shot with the carded figures was shot a couple of days ago before I opened them up. So that is, I'm stone sober for that stuff. Looking at the figures, I don't even remember exactly what I said, so I could potentially repeat myself as I look at the figures now outside of the packaging. But at the time when I shot this a couple weeks ago, they were still carded. It was kind of my first impressions of the figures because I had just opened them up out of the box that I received them in. So anyway, why don't we jump in to taking a look at the figures carded, and then we'll be back to discuss the figures once they're outside of the packaging. This beer is good, but it is strong, for sure. All right, first figure. So first up, let's take a look at the G.I. Joe Trooper in the packaging. Now, technically, this figure is not from this wave. This is from the previous wave. But it was one of those basic figures that Super 7's been putting in every line where they give you like 6 to 9 variations of a basic trooper. And I like to get usually at least 3 of them. So if they give you a bearded and a mustached and a clean shaven version, or if they give you 3 different skin tones, I like to get at least one of all the 3 different skin tones and of the 3 different facial hairs Anyway, so when these guys came out, I decided I wanted to get a few of them, so I'm going to wait until maybe they go on sale. Now, I was able to get this guy when I bought the newest wave on sale, so I went with the dark skin and the bearded face. So we'll take a closer look at him in a minute when I open him up. But you can see the packaging there. I believe that the unique packaging, it matches the figure you bought. So if I bought the white guy with the mustache, for example, then the card art would show a white guy with a mustache. So that's pretty cool that they took the time to not only make so many distinct figures, but so many distinct cards. However, the back of the packaging, where you see the file card, you can see that is generic. So it's just got the standard clean-shaven white guy on the back of the packaging. Now, this is a little bit lazy in the picture they've got here, because when Super 7 makes these Trooper figures, you know, like I knew about the green shirts and the Navy soldiers or whatever. Like I remember them from the cartoon. But then when they come up with some of these other characters, like the female combat engineer, I wasn't sure if they just completely made that up or if they pulled that from somewhere, like maybe just one little background shot of the cartoon. But when it comes to this one, I assumed they must have pulled it from somewhere in the cartoon. But on that shot that they used, this is the same picture that they used on the file card for the basic green shirt we got in Wave 1. And they've added those camo patterns. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure these characters never appeared this way in the cartoon. Which makes sense because the camo pattern would probably just make it more difficult to animate in color. So, why, overcomplicate things? I don't mind if Super 7 just made this up completely out of their imagination because it's still a cool looking figure. And I like expanding, my G.I. Joe army. So, anyway, cool file card, cool card art. And, yeah, you might have just caught a glimpse of Megatron back there. These cards don't stand up very well on their own, so Megatron is kind of helping me out by holding these cards in place. Anyway, let's take a look at this guy outside of the packaging. Okay, so here is the G.I. Joe Camo Trooper outside of the packaging. And I think these guys are pretty cool. I really like the look of them. And I like the idea of a basic trooper in G.I. Joe. Now, I can understand why some people might not, because kind of the whole idea of G.I. Joe is that these are the most elite soldiers, and they get drafted into G.I. Joe. Like, even if you look at the live-action movie The Rise of Cobra, as an example, like Duke and Ripcord that were played by Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans, they're soldiers and they're tasked with transporting some secret weapon, and then Cobra shows up and attacks them, and then all these like special ops guys show up out of nowhere and they rescue them. And then Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans are like, "Who are you guys?" And they're like, "We're G.I. Joe. We're a super secret, military organization. We're the best of the best." And they recruit those guys into G.I. Joe. So that's kind of the premise. Now, the movie made G.I. Joe a little bit more of an international team, whereas in the old cartoon comic books, it was more of an American team. But regardless, when you've got the best of the best, and these guys all have individual code names like Duke and Snake Eyes, you could kind of wonder, well, then where do these guys fit into the equation? These are G.I. Joes, but they're just kind of nameless troopers. Maybe these are guys that are like in contention to become individual G.I. Joes, and they have to earn their code names. I don't know. In the comic books, I don't recall there being any green shirts, these basic guys. In the cartoon, there definitely were. At least there was other soldiers running around. Maybe they weren't officially G.I. Joes, but they were backing up G.I. Joe. So, I think it was the first wave of G.I. Joe reaction figures, they gave us this guy. This was the G.I. Joe green shirt as he appeared in the cartoon. Kind of a light green, like olive green shirt and helmet, and then dark green pants. So we get this figure in a bunch of different varieties. You could get him in different skin tones and different facial hair. So with this figure here, in the camo, while I think it looks cool, I don't think this figure appeared in the cartoon like this. I think this is kind of a creation of Super 7, which I'm fine with. But anyway, one thing that Super 7 does that is cool is they give us figures from the cartoon that have never had toys before. This guy, it's debatable whether he had toys before. Hasbro has actually given us green shirt figures before, but none that looked as cartoon accurate as this guy. So I dig this guy for sure, but I don't think he's from a particular episode of the cartoon or any episode of the cartoon for that matter. Now, looking at these two figures side by side, I think they are the exact same from the neck down. They seem to have the same kind of like web gear and harness on the back of their outfit, the same pouches on the side of their pants, the same belt and all that sort of stuff. Their heads are different because this guy has goggles on his helmet. And the other versions of this guy you could get, he has goggles either on his helmet or over his eyes. I only have this version right now. But yeah, I'm glad that Super 7 at least sculpted a new head for this guy rather than just repaint this guy in camo. That would have been particularly lazy. But they gave us a new head anyway, and I dig it. I'm all for having some extra troopers. And even though I'm being a little frugal right now and I only ordered one version of this guy, if they have a really good sale on at some point, like let's just say these figures are half price, I could totally see myself buying, 5, 6 more of these guys, the different variations. So the white skin, the dark skin, goggles on his face, goggles off his face, and, building a whole squad of these guys. Because I really think they help fill out a display, and I like them. So anyway, I don't think I have a whole lot more to say. He's got kind of a cool, a cool weapon. It's not the standard G.I. Joe rifle that, like, say, Duke and Snake Eyes came with. It's a little bit more of a, I don't know, I want to say AK-47. I don't know. I don't know anything about guns. But it's a cool gun. And to be honest, I'm kind of surprised it's not the same laser rifle that the standard green shirt came with in Wave 1. It's a little bit different. Anyway, pretty cool. So here is the G.I. Joe military police officer from Wave 4. So this is the first Wave 4 figure I'm showing you, and it's actually my only heroic character from the wave. Because otherwise, there was a Duke and a Snake Eyes in the wave, but I didn't get them. So, yeah, no name G.I. Joes this time around, just this guy. And he looks pretty great. Now, interestingly enough, they only made this guy, I believe, in the one color scheme. So you only have the option to get this clean-shaven black guy, where in the past they've given you all those other options. So I'm not sure if they found that just wasn't making sense and if people weren't buying, either certain facial hairs or certain nationalities or whatever. But this time around, this is the only option. And I'm kind of fine with that. I don't really feel the need to have that many varieties with every single trooper figure. However, if you're somebody that really wants to build your military police ranks, it would be a lot nicer to be able to buy, some different guys instead of the same guy over and over again. But anyway, so there is the card art for him. This is a brand new character that never appeared in the vintage toy line, so this isn't based on any old artwork or anything like that. It's completely original to this figure. For the file card, so there you see a picture of a military police guy. So these guys, I assume, did appear somewhere in the cartoon at one point or another, probably just in the background. But you get a little bit of a write-up. And like the last trooper we looked at, there is no file name or birthplace in there. Those are left blank. So I guess you could fill those in yourself if you wanted to make this character, represent you or something in your collection. But otherwise, yeah, that's him. Okay, so let's talk about this next guy. So this is the G.I. Joe MP, the military police officer. And he's a cool figure. I like him. Now, I don't remember him from the cartoon. I'm sure he was there, because as I showed you, I think, in the carded section, that they actually did find a still image from the G.I. Joe cartoon to put on his file card. So he was obviously there. As opposed to the camo guy, where they just kind of, made that drawing up themselves. But yeah, so this guy was in the show, but probably not in any significant degree. And I'm not sure why they only gave us one version of this guy. Like, I understand why. It's probably a lot more like financially viable to just give us one version of this figure and everybody can buy this one figure. It seemed a little crazy to me how Super 7 has been giving us 6 to 9 versions of all the other troopers. Like 3 different skin tones, clean shaven, beards, mustaches. Like, I appreciate the option to diversify my team, but considering that you're going to have some people that only want to buy the white guys, and some people that are only going to want to buy the mustached guys, and some guys that are only going to want to buy the black guys, it just seems like a lot of SKUs to have to deal with. So with the military police guy, at least at this point, they've only given us one guy. He's like dark-skinned, clean-shaven, and I'm fine with that. Although, if I was the type of guy that liked to army build, I probably would buy fewer of this figure than I would have with previous troopers, because if I bought this guy 10 times, he's just going to look like I have 10 clones of the same guy. Whereas if, the other guys, I can buy them 9 times and they all look a little different. So, I don't know. I'm sure Super 7 has done the math and figured out what makes more sense. Like, cost-wise, does it make sense to only give one variation and just people will buy however many of those they want? Or for us to spend the money and the tooling to give 9 different versions and then people will buy more? I don't know. It would have been nice, I guess, to have variations of this guy, but I don't really care. I'm fine with just one MP, and he looks good. And sculpt-wise, he looks pretty basic, but he is completely different from, say, the G.I. Joe Trooper from Wave 1. Like, if I do a comparison of these guys, like, the Trooper has pouches on the side of his pant legs. This guy does not, so it's all new legs. The arms, the MP has the armband that says MP on the arm. I don't know if you can see that. You'll probably see it in the close-up. This guy does not have an armband, so it's at least one brand new arm. And from the look of it, I think it's 2 brand new arms. Definitely. This guy has more of a cuff on his sleeve, where this guy doesn't. So new arms and a new torso. Like, they're similar, the same belt and everything, but this guy's got the web gear with the straps that run across the front of his jacket, where this guy does not. So it's basically a whole new body from the neck down, and from the neck up as well. He's got a different shaped helmet. So yeah, as far as I can tell, this is an entirely new figure, and I think it's great because he looks basic enough that you could probably assume, oh, they just took the Wave 1 Trooper and repainted him in different colors. But that's not the case. They've given us something entirely new. I think he looks great. He's a nice new addition to your G.I. Joe collection because we've never gotten an MP in any format. Like I said earlier, we've gotten the green shirt before. Never as cartoon accurate as this particular figure, but we have got it. Both in the O-ring version and the 3rd generation 4-inch version. But yeah, MP, nope, never got a figure of him at all in any format. So this is brand new, and he's pretty cool. I like it. So here is Raven, the Cobra Strato-Viper, in the packaging. So again, this is a character that has never had an action figure before. She did appear in the cartoon in the 80s. But this is the first time she's ever been put into plastic. So a completely original piece of artwork, not based on any vintage artwork or anything. And then for the file card, there is a shot of her directly pulled from the cartoon. Now, even though she is an individual, they don't give you a birthplace or her file name because she is a Cobra terrorist. So I guess they don't usually give up their names and birthplaces. But yeah, it's interesting to get a unique character like this who we've never had before. So I hope to see more of this in this line. They've already given us a few of them, such as the Blind Woodsman and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to add this character to my collection because she's never been there before. But anyway, that's her in the card. We'll take a look at her outside of the packaging in a second. Okay, next up is Raven. So she is the Cobra Strato-Viper. Now she looks a little different from your general Strato-Viper. Not only is she missing her helmet, but she's also got this big collar, which I don't think ever appeared on any previous version of the Strato-Viper. She's got a little gun here, which I just dropped. I don't know if this pistol is unique to her or not. The ReAction figures reuse a lot of the same weapons, but yeah, she's got this little pistol here. I don't know if you can see it on my forehead, but yeah, it might be unique to her. It might be a piece we've got before. Anyway, so when this figure was put up for pre-order, I bought it right away, just like I did all the other guys, because this was a character that I didn't have before, so I didn't buy Snake Eyes, Duke, and Mutt because I already have versions of those characters. I don't have her, but to be honest, I didn't remember her. I loved the G.I. Joe cartoon when I was a kid, but we're talking, 35 years ago or so, since I've watched a lot of those episodes. Like, I own the entire G.I. Joe series on DVD, but even when I bought the box sets on DVD, I don't think I went back and rewatched the whole thing. I have some favorite episodes that I remember very vividly, but there's definitely some episodes that I don't remember so well. And when this figure was announced, I was like, who's this chick? I don't remember her. So before I did this review, I wanted to specifically sit down and watch the episode of the cartoon that this figure is based on. And I did that actually just today. And it was pretty good. I think the episode was called In the Presence of Mine Enemies or something like that. But it featured the G.I. Joe Slipstream, which is a pilot. He came with the G.I. Joe jet called the Conquest, which, it's a cool little jet. But to me, since I've been with G.I. Joe since the very beginning, Ace is the G.I. Joe pilot that came with the G.I. Joe Sky Striker. And that is the jet and the pilot that I most associate with G.I. Joe. Anything that came later, I was kind of like, yeah, sure, they're second best. So I never loved Slipstream and the Conquest. I never owned the Conquest when I was a kid. I did own the figure Slipstream that came with the vehicle, but I never had the vehicle. Anyway, I don't really remember this episode, but watching it again, I really liked it because it starts off with Slipstream on a mission and he's trying to intercept some Cobra plans, and then Cobra scatters some Cobra Night Ravens, which is the big black Cobra jet, kind of the second generation Cobra jet after the Rattler, which was the first generation. Anyway, the Night Ravens are chasing Slipstream down, and him and a particular Night Raven pilot get into this dogfight, and they both shoot at each other, and they crash land on kind of a deserted island together. And Slipstream goes over and he sees that the pilot is kind of trapped in the wreckage of the airplane, and he goes to rescue the pilot, and he finds out that it's a female pilot and that it's Raven. And so he goes to try to rescue her, and she is very not receptive to him helping her, and she tries to fight him off. And so the two of them are kind of wrestling around on this island. And then Cobra sends a bunch of their battle android troopers, which is their robot soldiers, to the island, and they start shooting at them. And Raven's like, "You're dead now, Joe. The Cobra bats will kill you, but they won't hurt me." But then they start shooting at her. They're very indiscriminate with how they're shooting. And she's like, "I don't understand why they'd be shooting at me too." And Slipstream's like, "Well, I'm going to run away, so you got to come with me. And she's like, well, my ankle is broken or sprained or whatever. So he picks her up and he runs with her and he kind of rescues her. And they find an old bunker that apparently is an abandoned Cobra base. And inside that base, they find some big monster, which is very Saturday morning cartoon-esque. And the monster starts chasing them. And it takes a really long time, but over the course of the episode, Raven starts to realize that Cobra is not looking out for her best interests. You know, they're sending monsters and robots, and they're trying to kill the G.I. Joe, but they don't seem to care if they kill her in the process. And meanwhile, the G.I. Joe is risking his life to save her time and time again. And at the end of the episode, spoiler alert, a G.I. Joe helicopter swoops in, lifeline and lift ticket, rescue the two of them, and the Joes say to Slipstream, they're like, looks like you have a hostage here. We have a Cobra hostage. And Slipstream looks at her and she's like, she rips off the Cobra emblem of her, and you can see it right there on the side of her arm. She's got a Cobra emblem. So she rips that off, and Slipstream says, no, this isn't a hostage. I think this is a recruit. And that's where the episode ends. And, it's one of those things where it reminded me why I love G.I. Joe so much. Like, sure, it's a silly cartoon. Sure, it was a little ridiculous. There was a big green ooze monster chasing them around with all these tentacles. It was a little simple and silly. But at the same time, it spoke to, like, Raven here was kind of radicalized by Cobra. She expected Cobra to take care of her, and Slipstream kept saying comments like, wow, they've really gotten to you, haven't they? Or they've really warped your mind, haven't they? And over the course of the episode, she realizes that, yes, they have. Like, they lied to her. And, it's the kind of thing that I could relate to even today. With all this shit that's going on with, in the media and the news, and like January 6th and all the, people that watch Fox News are like, they believe one narrative because they're being lied to. And it all seemed very relevant for like a cartoon that aired in 1983 or 84. And here it is. I'm thinking like, wow, these people that are radicalized because they're being told this narrative, which isn't true. It's weird. I really liked the episode, and I don't remember that episode from when I was a kid. And even if I did, it probably would have hit me different today watching it. So I really liked it. And it's kind of a shame that the episode ends with her joining G.I. Joe and leaving Cobra, but we never see her again. I'm pretty sure that's the one and only episode that Raven ever appeared in. But yeah, it was a good episode. So the figure here, like, it looks like a typical Strato-Viper. So back in the vintage line, there were Strato-Vipers. They came packaged with the Night Raven jet. Well, there was one Strato-Viper. And, the Strato-Viper appeared again in the modern third generation line. It came in different color schemes. I have a few different Strato-Vipers in my collection. She's wearing the basic outfit, just without the helmet. And, I really like this character. I didn't know anything about her until today, when I rewatched that cartoon that I would have seen when I was a kid. And, I really like it. I'm really glad I picked it up. It could have been easy for me to dismiss this figure and be like, she's not an important character. She's like a one-off, and not buy her. But I would recommend to any of you guys that are kind of on the fence, watch that episode. I have it on DVD, but I watched it on YouTube. It was just more convenient for me. So the full episode is on YouTube. So watch that, and then buy this figure. You're going to want it. It's a good figure. It's a good character. And I would like to see more of her. I hope that maybe we see this character reappear in the comic books or something at some point in the future, because it seemed like they really kind of set the table for an interesting character there. So, we did have the character of Mercer in the vintage G.I. Joe line, which was a former Viper that defected to G.I. Joe. And, he was always kind of fascinating to me. And I think Raven could have been just as fascinating. So, yeah, check out the episode, buy the figure. I figured we'd take a look at these two guys together. This is Tomax and Xamot, the Crimson Twins. So these guys are identical twins, but they're mirror images of one another. So you can see that they part their hair on the opposite side, and their outfits are the same except mirrored. So, you know, this guy's sash goes this way, his sash goes that way. He has the one kind of collar on one side and the shoulder pad on one side. The other guy has the opposite. So other than them being the mirror images of each other, the only real difference is Xamot has a scar on his face, which you might not be able to see. Well, you can sort of see it there, I think. But we're going to take a closer look at them outside of the packaging in a minute. But for here, you can see the card art. You know, they kind of, you know, you could say they cheaped out on this a little bit because they obviously just paid for one art piece and then they just mirrored it. But that kind of makes perfect sense here. So, yeah, it's the same piece of artwork, just flipped. And it looks pretty good. Now for the file card here. So we do have an original picture of Xamot. And then he's got his own file card there. And then for Tomax, oops. Tomax does have a different picture because they, you know, they are individual characters. Super 7 was very easily, you know, able to pull a still from each of these guys from the old cartoon. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to add these guys to my ReAction figure collection because I was a big fan of these guys when I was a kid. So anyway, let's pop them open and take a look at them outside of the packaging. Although I guess just one thing to note is the change in color and that square behind them, which is kind of curious. I don't really know if there's much rhyme or reason to why Super 7 chooses the colors. They've been doing that since Wave 1. So you see here like Ravens on a yellow square. It doesn't really seem to matter if it's G.I. Joes or Cobras. They just seem to like to change it up. I think it's just those three colors they use. Maybe there's a blue. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I would kind of think they would make these colors the same. So for people that wanted to pin these guys on their wall, they would look even more similar. But maybe it was a conscious decision to make sure they had different color squares to differentiate them from people that want to pin them up on their wall. But anyway, just something to make note of. Anyway, let's open these guys up. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at the Crimson Twins, Tomax and Xamot. So I love these guys. The original figures came out in, I want to say, 1985. And they came in a 2-pack. And, you know, their whole gimmick is that they're mirror images of each other. So the original figures, they came packaged together. And there was like a little, like basically foil mirror on each side of the packaging. So they were kind of reflected into themselves. And anyway, it was a really cool kind of gimmick. Because I think they were maybe the first G.I. Joes that came out in a 2-pack together. Nobody else had. And every time I talk about vintage toys on this channel, I tell you about how me and my older brother Doug, we shared a bedroom our whole lives and we collected toys together. So, you know, for every He-Man figure I had, Doug had Skeletor. You know, for every Optimus Prime I had, Doug had Megatron. You know, we split everything down the middle. And so when it came to Tomax and Xamot, we got this 2-pack as a grading present one year. So I must have, I don't know what grade I was in 1985, but like elementary school. So we got the 2-pack and we split them. So Tomax was my figure, Xamot was Doug's figure. And yeah, I loved these guys. I loved them. And so yeah, I'm glad to have these new versions of them because I have multiple versions of these characters throughout the years. I have the original vintage figures from 85. And then when G.I. Joe kind of had a bit of a resurgence in the early 2000s, I got new versions of them. Not just in their kind of like crazy little acrobatic suits here, but these guys were kind of the legal face of Cobra in the cartoon. They ran a company called Extensive Enterprises. And just as often as they appeared in these outfits, they appeared in like 3-piece suits. And they were kind of like businessmen. So in the early 2000s, we got the first versions of these guys in suits, which was pretty cool. And then, yeah, in the modern line that started in 2007, We got updated versions of these guys in these outfits, and then we also got suited versions as well. And now we've got new versions of them in the 6-inch classified line, which are pretty cool. Yeah, I've always liked these characters. But despite all those versions that I've had in the past, I've never had a Sunbow cartoon accurate version the way these guys are. The vintage figures, which I absolutely adore, like, they're kind of dorky looking, really, when you look at them. They have kind of like Lego hair. It's almost like a bald head with like hair painted on it. It's very kind of flat. Where in the cartoon, they had much wavier hair. And these figures really kind of capture that wavier, kind of mullety hair. Much more feathered. And they look great. I'm just, I'm super stoked about these guys. I was thrilled to get them in the classified line last year. In fact, Tomax made my best of the year list. He was in my top 20. And I don't know if this guy's going to make my top 20 this year, because they're a little more they're kind of simple and everything. Plus, maybe the novelty is worn off a little bit because I just got them last year in the classified line. But anyway, I think these guys, these are some of my favorites of this particular wave. I think they're awesome. I'm super glad to have them. Cartoon accurate versions of Tomax and Xamot. Super cool. I don't know. I love these things. They're great. Now here is a new version of the Cobra Trooper, or the blue shirt as they're sometimes called. And I'm guessing this is the exact same figure as we've got before. And I'm guessing the artwork is probably the exact same, just slightly changed to add this new camo pattern. Now this camo pattern is a completely new design by Super 7. It's not based on any look from old comic books or cartoons or anything like that. And, I'm all for them giving us some new repaints and stuff. I don't particularly love this design. I think it's kind of a weird camo with all the, patterns and designs in it, but we'll take a closer look at the actual figure in a minute. But yeah, you can see it right there on the packaging. It almost looks like he's been run over by a tire or something with some of that design. I don't really get it. I think it's supposed to be sneaky, but I don't know how successful that really comes across. So this might be different artwork. I'll probably pop in an insert to do a comparison to the standard figure we got before, but I think it's probably just reused. And on the back, so they have got a file card there. Now, they do have a trooper in this design, so it looks like they pulled that out of the cartoon. I don't think they did, though, because I'm pretty sure they mentioned in the advertising that this was a unique design to Super 7. So if that's the case, I'm guessing that they took a still from the cartoon of a standard guy with a solid blue shirt, and then they tweaked the artwork like they did on the Wave 3 camo guy to kind of give him that new pattern. So, yeah, kind of interesting. But anyway, let's take a look at him outside the packaging, and we'll compare him to some previous Cobra Troopers. Okay. So we've got the Cobra Trooper up next. So there he is, Cobra Trooper. I love the Cobra Trooper. Like the basic Cobra blue shirt, as they're kind of commonly known. It's just a fantastic design. It's very basic. It looks great. I loved the original figure from the 80s. I loved pretty much every update of that figure. We got a new 6-inch version of the figure in the classified line in the past year or so. I love it. And yeah, we got the ReAction figure. I think it was Wave 1, maybe Wave 2, that we got the original Trooper. And I thought he was great. I have multiple variations of him because the original Cobra blue shirt, do I have him handy? I think he's over there. Anyway, I'll cut him in when I do the side by side here. But the original Cobra Trooper was available in 6 variations. So you got him in 3 different skin tones. So you can get him in white, black, and Latino, let's say. And also the back of them, you can see on his web gear how it kind of makes like an H pattern. So they went so far to give you all 3 skin variations in an H pattern and what they call a Y pattern, simply because in the cartoon they appeared, sometimes they had an H shape on their back, sometimes they had a Y shape. I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan, but I never would have thought about that or given it a second thought. But Super 7 apparently thought fans would care, and maybe there are some fans that would refuse to buy an H shape. Maybe they only buy Y shapes or vice versa. I don't know. I've never met any of those people. But the fact that Super 7 gave you that option just seems pretty cool. So yeah, I think I only bought 3 variations of the original. I think I bought the 3 different skin tones. I might have bought 2 of them in the H back, 1 of them in the Y back. I really wasn't concerned with getting all 6 of them. And then I've since got other versions of this guy because I get a couple of updated versions of him with the jetpack on them as part of a San Diego Comic Convention box set. And then I got the glow-in-the-dark version of the Cobra Trooper that came last year as well. So I've got a bunch of Cobra Trooper reaction figures. So when they announced that they were doing another repaint of the Cobra Trooper in this wave, I was kind of like, sure, I'll take another one. I don't know how I feel about this paint deco. It's fine. I don't think it necessarily looks bad, but it doesn't necessarily look good either. It just seems kind of redundant because it's not based on a vintage toy, and it's not based on a look from the cartoon, which is what Super 7 typically does, is they do deep dives in the cartoon and gives us figures that Hasbro never gave us. Instead, what they did here is they just said, we're going to come up with a unique camo design and give that to you. And again, I'd be fine with that at the $10 to $12 price range. I'd say, sure, go ahead and experiment. But at the $25 to $30 price range, I'm a little more like, I don't know, dude. Maybe you shouldn't be just whipping out repaints willy-nilly. I would have rather get this guy in, say, a full gray outfit like the original Stinger driver. That would make more sense to me. I'm sure we'll get that sometime down the road. But this figure here does feel a little bit like a cash grab because it's not based on anything. It's just like, hey, we already created the sculpt for this figure. We've already got the mold, so it's not going to cost us that much. Buy this. And I'm one of those suckers that said, sure, why not? But it's fine. Like, the camo pattern is kind of cool. I posted a figure of this guy on Instagram a few days ago, and I've gotten a few comments. People have commented that the camo pattern kind of looks like snakeskin. It kind of looks like tire treads. I agree with both of those assessments, except it's inconsistent. Like, some of the pattern looks like tire treads or snakeskin, and other ones it's just kind of blotchy. I don't know. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But still, I love the Cobra Trooper, and this isn't a bad deco, so I'll take it. Now here's the figure that I'm probably most excited about from this wave. This is Red Laser. So this is just a repaint, I believe, of the previously released Cobra Commander figure. They might have changed up something, maybe the legs or the arms, but I think the whole figure is just a repaint of Cobra Commander. And as for the artwork, I'm not sure. I might have to break out my old Cobra Commanders to double check too, because they might have given us new artwork for Red Laser, although I wouldn't be surprised if they just used the existing Cobra Commander artwork and again just kind of tweaked it in Photoshop or something to change it over to Red Laser. But the background on this guy is Cobra Commander was released in the UK back in the 80s in this paint scheme as a different color known as Red Laser, and rather than be part of Cobra, he was a member of the Red Shadows. Now, I'm kind of surprised. I don't think it mentions the Red Shadows on his packaging here. It does refer to Baron Ironblood, which I believe was the leader of the Red Shadows over in the UK, where G.I. Joe was called Action Force. So, yeah, this is a cool little nod to the UK G.I. Joe / Action Force that most kids in North America had no idea about. Now, they have since Hasbro has kind of homaged him in the past. We got a version of him in one of the G.I. Joe Collectors Club figure subscription services in one of its final years, which I'll do a side-by-side with this guy once we open him up. But anyway, I'm really glad to see Super 7 revisiting this guy, because he's a fun character, rather than just another, they could have given us a red Cobra Commander, which, has precedent. Cobra Commander has been painted red before, but I much prefer getting Red Laser, as he is a unique character, and I really think this paint job looks great. So there you go. That's the last of them. So why don't we pop him open and take a look. Okay, so let's take a look at the last figure, Red Laser, outside of the packaging. I don't want to repeat myself too much about what I said a few days ago when I showed you him in the packaging, but essentially, in the early 80s, when kids like me in North America were getting G.I. Joe, there was a toy company in the UK called Palitoy that was releasing figures called Action Force, and it was a team of military specialists, and they were fighting essentially a terrorist organization called the Red Shadows, and you had characters like Baron Ironblood and Kraken and things like that. And they were, I think, 5 points of articulation, similar to these figures, or to Star Wars figures. And so, that line, Action Force, was plugging along for a couple of years in the early 80s, right around the same time G.I. Joe launched in North America. And then my understanding is that around 1985, Hasbro bought out Palitoy, and they started putting out their G.I. Joe figures under the Action Force banner. So instead of 5 points of articulation figures, they were now the O-ring figures with the elastic waistband. And by and large, the figures were the same that we got in North America. So a character, if they were called, Duke. In America, he was called Duke. In the UK, except the card said Action Force instead of G.I. Joe. But some of the characters got repainted, and they became different characters altogether. And with Cobra Commander, they repainted him red, and they gave him a whole different look, because they took that silver faceplate and they gave him little beady eyes in it and everything, and they called that character Red Laser. So that was not supposed to be Cobra Commander. That was a unique character. Part of the Red Shadows, he was Red Laser. And that's the kind of stuff I had no idea about when I was a kid. Why would I? I was born in 1978. I collected G.I. Joe. I was 4 years old when G.I. Joe launched in 1982. So when G.I. Joe was kind of really hitting its stride in 85, 86, I was the perfect age for G.I. Joe. And the internet didn't exist until kind of the late 90s. So right around the time when I was graduating high school, the internet kind of came around. And I wasn't really collecting toys that much. I was still buying toys. Some Star Wars, some Gundam, some McFarlane. But, that's when I started kind of doing a bit of a deep dive and being like, oh, really? There's other people in the world that collect G.I. Joe. There's this fandom about G.I. Joe. And it was really interesting to learn about some of these international releases, things I didn't know about. And for me at the time, it was probably around 2002, to be honest with you, where I discovered a website called General's Joe's, which still exists today. It's not updated all that much. Nowadays, it's called General's Joe's Reborn, and I think it's because the guy that runs the website, Justin Bell, he lost the domain name to General's Joe's, so he relaunched it as General's Joe's Reborn. But I don't know. I just want to give a shout out to Justin Bell, because when I was kind of, in my early 20s and kind of rediscovering toy collecting and G.I. Joe, his website was such a great resource to me, and I absolutely loved it. He was updating it all the time. He started, as far as I know, the first G.I. Joe podcast. He was on it. It was called What's on Joe Mind, which still exists today, but it's not. He's not on it anymore, and it's not very good, in my opinion. Anyway, I really appreciated Justin Bell's insights and reviews, and he really introduced me to, not that he wrote about International G.I. Joes so much, but he kind of introduced me to the world of International G.I. Joes, and he introduced me to other websites I could find and things like that. And I was really kind of fascinated with the international G.I. Joes, like Red Laser and stuff. Anyway, cut to several years down the road, the G.I. Joe's Collectors Club, which was a company called Fun Publications, ran both the G.I. Joe and the Transformers Collectors Clubs. They would release these exclusive figures, and they released essentially the first official Hasbro release of Red Laser. They took a figure, which was called Ultimate Cobra Commander, and they repainted it to look like the old Palitoy Red Laser figure, and it was really cool. It's the kind of like homage that I really appreciated, and it's I'm looking at him right now across the room. He looks great. He's got like a little Red Shadows flag behind him. It's a really cool figure. I'll cut it in here, but I kind of thought, well, other than that. That's a one-off. I'm never going to have another Red Laser figure. So the fact that Super 7 gave us this Red Laser figure, so they took the original Cobra Commander ReAction figure and repainted it as a Red Laser, which is exactly what Hasbro did back in the 80s. They took their original kind of baby blue Cobra Commander, repainted him into red, put some eyeballs on him, and released him as a different character, Red Laser. And I just think it's great to have these like weird, like kind of international homages that the casual fan might be like, what the hell is this? Why is there a red Cobra Commander called Red Laser? Why has he got a skull and crossbones on his head? I think it's awesome. I love it. That these real deep cuts, and Red Laser is a deep cut. And I hope we get more stuff like this in the future. I think it's great because repaints. That's kind of the name of the game. And Super 7 has they released this Cobra Commander originally in baby blue. I bought it. Then they released it again in navy blue. I bought it again. Then they released it a third time with a cape accessory, and I was like, I'm not buying that version. This is starting to get ridiculous. I don't need to buy every version of the character you give me. And, but this is the kind of stuff that absolutely, take my money. Give me a new character. Give me this weird homage to some UK repaint that I didn't know about when I was a kid, but as an adult collector, I super appreciate. So, yeah, I absolutely love this figure. I think it's great. It is the highlight of the wave for me. And I just dropped him, and I think that's it. I'm probably going to wrap this episode up. So, anyway, let's cut to the goodbye that I shot earlier. So, quite often with these videos, I shoot the intro and the outro, and then maybe a day or two later, I shoot the actual middle bit of the video. So, I literally just finished talking about Red Laser, and I said, I'll cut to the outro that I shot earlier. And then I realized I didn't shoot an outro earlier. I shot the stuff where the figures were carded, a couple of days ago. But I didn't shoot an intro or an outro. I shot the intro tonight. And I guess I need to shoot the outro tonight. So here we are. We're back again for an outro. I'm just about done this beer. It was pretty good. It is pretty strong. I'm not sure if I'm going to dive into another beer or not because it is 12:25. But maybe. I still haven't watched this week's episode of The Mandalorian that aired on Wednesday, so I might watch that. Maybe I'll have another beer and I'll watch The Mandalorian. Anyway, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned because I'm hoping to be back with another episode with Chad in the next couple of days. We're going to discuss all the new toy reveals that happened this past week or so. So, yeah. Come back for those. I'll see you then. Ciao.